All right. So thank you all for joining us for our monthly Eloqua user group meeting. Karen Pendle, I'll be your host for today. Let me do something really exciting here. I'm going to share my screen and pull up some PowerPoint slides. It's going to get real crazy. Here we go. Oops, wrong deck. Let me make sure I pull up the correct deck. All right. So just real quick. Doesn't know me, people call me KP. There's kind of a negative connotation with Karen these days. If you haven't ever Googled Karen or Karen memes, you should. It's pretty funny. And some days I wake up and I have hair like the Karen memes. Basically, it's a negative connotation because it's supposed to mean like a white privileged woman that's rude to people, which I'm like, hopefully I'm not that person ever in my life. I try not to be, but anyway, it's kind of funny. But I have been in the Eloqua world for the last 17 years. I was a marketer who used it for 4 years at 2 different companies and then switched over to consulting over the last 13 years. So I've been a part of Eloqua user groups as an attendee, as a user, in person in different cities, DC, Boston, New York, mainly East Coast, now that I think of it, which is where I've spent most of my life. I am working hard to enjoy life outside of work in Tennessee, where I live now. And also that picture on the right-hand side is in upstate New York, 2 hours north of New York City. It looks totally different than the city. Clearly, you can see there. My dogs are at the bottom swimming in the lake. We enjoy it a whole bunch up there. So I run this Eloqua user group meeting. I'm honored to do that for you all, and hopefully give you some tips and information that helps you to further your team's use of Eloqua. And I say team, you might be the only one at your company that uses it. I have been there. I was at one of the companies I worked for, our only Eloqua user, which was interesting. But anyways, hopefully this is helpful for you. And if you have feedback, if ever, feel free to share it with me on how we can do this better. I also run a quarterly webinar. It used to be monthly, but now it's quarterly, comparing Eloqua, Marketo, Pardot, and HubSpot. So if you're ever curious or renewing or deciding if you want to keep Eloqua or not, feel free to join that. My opinion, 99% of the time, most situations, Eloqua is the best fit for people that already have it or who are shopping. But switching gears here, just want to take a second to mention Autism Awareness or Acceptance Month. They've recently changed it. Every month has some kind of awareness or some kind of a special theme, Black history, women's history, why is there not men's history? There's different reasons for that. But this month, April, is Autism Acceptance Month. And I thought it would be kind of helpful to share this with you all in case you didn't know, to make you more aware. We all come across someone in our lives who has autism, or as you might have heard, is on the spectrum, because autism is totally a spectrum where you have people who are nonverbal all the way to people who are like Temple Grandin, well known in the autism world, extremely intelligent and articulate, but she didn't speak for years as a child. She was way behind developmentally in her language when she was a kid. Anyways, you can watch a movie about her. I saw her in person and it inspired me to look at autism differently. If you didn't know, 1 in 100 children are actually diagnosed with autism, or technically they call it now autism spectrum disorder, ASD. So that's a lot. I feel like, you know, when I'm scrolling my social accounts like Facebook, for instance, it seems like I often hear about friends who have kids and they find out one of their children has autism. So I feel like this is something that hits home for a lot of people. And if you don't personally know somebody who has autism, chances are you've communicated with someone at a Starbucks who works there, or at wherever you go out hiking. Maybe you've walked across someone and they were awkward and looking down, and maybe they had autism. But anyways, in the US, it's actually a greater number of children, 1 in 59. But these, I'm not going to read these obviously, but just some things to think about for communicating with someone with autism. This is more specifically with adults with autism. And actually, it's very interesting. In Silicon Valley, it's known that a lot of the intelligent people like Steve Jobs and others are on the spectrum. So in our line of work in marketing, and especially if you happen to work for like Oracle or a technology company, the chances are even greater that you're working beside someone's with autism. But when I read through these tips for communicating with someone on the spectrum, to me, it hit home like a lot of this just seems like good communication 101, but one of the first things I think is that the very first tip that probably is different, right, is not speaking to somebody with autism like they're a child. It's like when you try to talk to somebody who maybe doesn't speak your language all that well, maybe their native language is Japanese and you're trying to talk to them in English. People tend to talk really loud. It's not necessary, right? That Japanese person can hear well, they may not know English well. So with autism and people on the spectrum, speaking to them like they are an adult, respecting them enough to speak to them like they're an adult. But the rest of the tips there are pretty straightforward, like using words honey, sweetie, cutie tend to be demeaning, whether you have autism or not. But anyway, I just thought I'd share this and give you some tips for not just like, hey, it's Autism Acceptance Month, but what can you do to actually apply that to your life? So, and if you haven't watched the movie, I think it's called Temple Grandin. Anyway, very good movie about a real person with autism, and she's just a pretty inspiring human being. All right, to what you came here for. So hopefully you're going to learn today. We're going to start with my typical quick reminders to keep you in the Eloqua, know what's happening that you really should know about. Then we're going to switch it over to Steve from the Sojourn team. He's going to talk about how to automate tracking your marketing sources, driving leads, contacts, whatever you want to call them at your organization, into Eloqua, specifically using UTM parameters. You may not even know what UTM parameters are, so he'll educate you on that. Then we're going to switch over to Chris Campbell from Oracle. I've known Chris for, gosh, at this point, it's probably like 10, 15 years. We used to work together at Eloqua back in the day. But he's going to give us an update on the latest feature highlights, basically for SMS or text messaging natively in Eloqua. If you didn't know it, you can do that now with Eloqua. You don't have to add an app onto Eloqua to do it. You still can, but you don't need to. And then we'll open it up for Q&A if there are any questions. If you have any questions, actually there's something in the chat. There's already a question in the chat. Feel free to enter them in the chat or the Q&A. I'll be monitoring both while we have our presentations today. If for some reason we don't answer your question, fear not. I look at those after each one of these meetings and make sure to follow up with people individually. So if I know the answer, I'll follow up. If you specifically have something for Chris or Steve that we need answered, we'll connect you. And then I will be sending you all this recording later today and just a quick recap. So if you have to jump out early, no worries. And the map comparison webinar that I mentioned earlier that I do quarterly, I've got a couple of questions about that. I will, you know what I'll do is in the follow-up email to you all today, I will include the link to it. So if anybody wants to go to the next one, I just did it yesterday. So the recording is on our website right now from yesterday. The next one will be July 20th, but I will send you guys that so you can either watch yesterday's recording or register for July's. And I'm always happy to just have the one-on-one conversation with you and your team or yourself. So Tanya, I will paste, I'll actually, as soon as I stop talking, I will paste in that map comparison webinar here in this Zoom chat in a couple of minutes. All right, so keep the questions coming as you need to in the Q&A. Relevant reminders. So this was when I was a user of Eloqua as a marketer, it was just, there's so much going on. I had a lot that I did outside of Eloqua, a lot of things in my job responsibility that did involve being logged into and using Eloqua. It was hard for me to keep up with like, when's Eloqua doing new features and fixing bugs or releases as they call them? What events are happening with the Eloqua community? So this is the point of this slide. One thing I don't have on this that I will add for next month is Oracle is having their Cloud World in October, later in October. It's a while away. It's why I didn't add it to this, but I wanted to at least mention it, that it's one of the big conferences or events that Oracle puts on. Used to be every single year, but with COVID, things got paused. So they are bringing it back to real life. We'll get together in Las Vegas. So I'll share more details. Oracle's already doing that, like Jody from the product team and others are already mentioning that in their webinars. So you'll start to see more and more communications about that, you know, hopefully getting you to take a closer look and think about registering. So first thing here though is the upcoming 22B release. So it actually starts for people on pod 7 on April 30th. If you want to know what pod you're on, just really quick, easy peasy, log into Eloqua and then right here in the URL, this is the same for everybody. You can log into Eloqua and you'll see P03. That means Sojourn is on pod 3. So there's a quick tip for you if you didn't know how to do that. So that's how you can backtrack into, we're on pod 3. Our Eloqua instance will automatically be updated by Oracle May 20th, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern time. You don't have to opt in for this, or you can't opt out of it. It's a good thing. Eloqua is going to have some things fixed, but more importantly, features added that users have requested. So next month, we'll have highlights of the 22B release to share with you. And then more details are here on Topliners, and the Oracle Eloqua product management team did a nice webinar, I think it was last week, on the new release that you can check out there and watch the recording. So they go into details about what to expect with the new release. It's done every single quarter. So the next one, April and May timeframe, as you see here in this chart. And sometimes this does change, so just keep an eye on it. This was as of, I think, late last week, maybe even early this week. And the other thing I want to just recommend is, if you're not already on the Eloqua user community group called Topliners, highly recommend that you join it so you can get updates on the new releases, keep up on those. Also, product roadmap updates for Eloqua. People often ask us about that, and sometimes I'll ask Oracle, but usually I check there first to see, well, when was the last presentation the product management team for Eloqua gave on Eloqua's product roadmap, and take a look at that. So they're definitely evolving the products. There's, opinions on this between like Eloqua and Marketo and Pardot and HubSpot and Salesforce Marketing Cloud, etc., on who's innovating the most. And really, it's hard to innovate all the time, but Eloqua is in a good spot, in my opinion, with innovating and staying current, and really neck and neck, and in some areas ahead of their competition, thankfully for us here who are using the platform. Free training if you need it. There's some resources, not going to go into too much more detail there. I say the same stuff every month, so I don't want to bore you all that have been here. If you missed one of our Eloqua user group meetings, or you're interested in just revisiting a topic, say from last month or a year ago, they're all posted on our website in our resource center under user groups. So feel free to take a look there anytime. This recording will be added there later today by yours truly. We put it on YouTube as well. And then a recommendation for, forget Eloqua for a second, for helping you to stay in the know on marketing and marketing operations, best practices. What are organizations doing to kick ass in both areas? What can you learn from them? What's the latest buzzwords that people are talking about? CDP, AI, ABM, they're all acronyms, it tends to be, it seems. Anyway, ClickZ is who I follow. They're one of my trusted sources. I don't get paid by anybody for any of this stuff. Oracle, ClickZ, anybody. This is just something I want to recommend to you guys that's helped me to keep up more on like the marketing operations strategies, best practices, and also they talk about technologies quite a bit there as well. So hopefully this is helpful. Let's keep moving. So for our first presenter today, we've got one of Sojourn's very own Eloqua experts. Steve McConnell is based in the London area. I don't know exactly where, Steve, feel free to share, but he's going to chat with you guys about the sources tracking and Eloqua, and even dive into Eloqua to show it. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Awesome, thanks, Karen. So just a really quick introduction for me. I'm Steve McConnell. I live in Clapham in London, if anyone's interested in the exact location. And yeah, I work very closely with KP and the rest of the team here. I'm just going to take you through something that I think is a really nice feature in Eloqua, which is the ability to automate UTM parameters. So I'm just going to share my screen now, bring that up, and we'll start going through it. So for those of you who maybe haven't heard of UTM parameters before, maybe if you're not familiar with it, it actually stands for Urchin Tracking Module. That's a company that used to exist way back in the day. Google bought them, kept using the technology, but they didn't change the name. So yeah, UTM, Urchin Tracking Module. What UTMs are for is basically we all have the same problem as marketers, where we've got a web page or our website where we're trying to drive marketing activity. So that's going to be through a variety of different channels. It could be via Eloqua, it could be via LinkedIn or Google Ads, as in this diagram. what we're trying to do in these channels is always the same, where we're trying to push traffic from these traffic sources to the web page. Now, the problem with that is tracking and separating out what traffic was. Let me see if I've got a question in the chat here, make sure everyone can see my screen. Yeah, they can. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, so just we're driving traffic through to these web pages from these different traffic sources. However, all we've got on these links from these ad channels right now is just a link to this web page. You can see everything's going to the same web page. We're promoting the same page across multiple channels. So unless we do something, we're not going to be able to differentiate where our traffic is coming from and what's driving the most conversions. So what a lot of companies do to solve this problem is they add what are called UTM values to all the links on the different channels. So you can see here now, we've got this little question mark here. We've got a UTM campaign. We've got an equals sign. You guys have probably seen that before. That's called a query parameter or a query string. And the specific type of query string we're looking at right now is called a UTM value. Most common three: UTM campaign, UTM medium, UTM source. And you can see how these are differentiated on the screen here for the different types of channels. So although these are all looking at the same campaigns, same campaign name, we have different mediums and different sources pushing through information to these channels. Now, if you use UTMs already, which you likely do, then you're already familiar with this. And what you'll also be familiar with is that it's kind of a pain sometimes. The problem with UTM parameters, they have to be generated outside of Eloqua and then manually added to links one by one for each email that you create. So if you want to put UTM values in your Eloqua emails, you might be creating those outside of Eloqua and copying them into Eloqua emails one by one, which obviously is really time consuming and kind of a pain and can generate errors. So Eloqua has a solution for this, where what you can do is you can use your campaign fields in your email campaigns to automatically add UTM parameters for all your emails that you send out of Eloqua. You can also add in custom parameters. So for example, you could put in the email subject line of an email that you're going to send. You could put in the email ID. Anything you want to track really can be added to the query parameters at the end of every single link that Eloqua puts in an email for you. The impact of this is it's immediate cost saving, right? Because you don't have to do all that work anymore. So if you're using UTM values right now and you're having to manually generate them outside of Eloqua, bring them into Eloqua, copy paste them every time, this is going to save you a lot of time. It's also going to be more accurate because you're not going to forget to do it. It's not going to break, anything like that. So you should be able to see you should be able to see an increase in your tracking accuracy as a result of that as well. So to configure this, what you can do is you can go into the email defaults area of Eloqua, and you can go to manage external tracking at the top right, and you can configure it there. I'm actually just going to jump into Eloqua real quick, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So in Eloqua, what we would do is we would move the Zoom load bar out of the way so I can actually talk to you guys. And I'm going to go into email defaults. And in email defaults, I need to go up to these advanced options here, and I need to go to manage external tracking. And then what you can do is you can use this UI to customize the parameters that you want to add on. So you can see we've got a set of parameters here. I'll just zoom in a little. UTM campaign equals, and it's going to merge in the email field, email name. UTM medium is always going to be email. UTM source is always going to be Eloqua, and Eloqua will automatically put this on the end of every link you do. However, you can add more fields from here. So you can add fields from the email, like the subject line. So if I go into the email fields, I've got all these different fields I can append as a UTM value. I've got campaign system fields, campaign custom fields. So if you have custom fields you're using in Eloqua, you can append that on as well. I've seen customers, for example, sync a list of campaigns into a pick list and then have that pick list as a campaign selection, things like that. So you can do some pretty cool stuff with this. All you do is once you know the actual thing that you want to add on your tracking, you click insert right here, and it will append the necessary kind of code and field merges into this little string here. And then you can save and close, and then that will apply the changes in Eloqua. So just go back to my slides. So let's close this quickly. Okay, and yeah, that's it. So it's immediate cost saving, saves you a lot of time, more accurate. And if you're one of those people out there who is doing that manually every day, you will probably be jumping up and down in a chair. Do let us know if you want any help with configuring that. You can reach out to us if you have any weird and wonderful requirements. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hand back over to KP.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. And I want to show you guys. So you all received, and you can check this if you'd like. Let me pull up my screen. I can only do one thing at a time. So when you received an email from us today, hopefully you got it in your inbox, our reminder for our meeting we're in right now to hopefully attend. When you hover over a link, you'll actually see down on my left-hand side there, the link, the full link drawn out, and it shows you the UTM campaign name, the medium, email, the source. So we have this enabled in our Eloqua instance that we use to send emails out. And you can see how it automatically pulled in the name of the email. It automatically put the sources, Eloqua. So that's the time savings benefit, is that it's automatically structuring these links for you in your emails in Eloqua, so you don't have to manually do so. And in that way, when you run your reports in, like, say, Google Analytics, where those UTM values can show, or even in Eloqua, like when he talked about on the campaign itself, having those custom fields, that also is helpful for insight reporting as well. So real question for you, Steve. Somebody said, do you have a UTM value generator you could recommend?
Yeah, I can see the question said on the UTM value generator, if you can, at least for Eloqua, and you can use Eloqua to actually generate those parameters for you automatically, you would just have to create a campaign and make selections in your campaign fields to launch the campaign. And then you'd be able to send out an email and it would do it for you. If you're thinking about other channels, a lot of channels actually have tools built into them to do similar things. So for example, Google Ads, it's a kind of Google, well, you know, everybody uses it, but Google kind of pioneered the technology. So if you're using Google Ads, you'll find ways of appending on UTM values automatically in there. And I think LinkedIn actually has that as well. But you'd have to check with a specialist for each of those platforms, but a lot of them will have a way of automating that. So my answer is, if you can possibly help it, don't use a generator. Try and automate it if you can. If you can't avoid generating them manually, you know, one is as good as the next, really. They're all kind of the same thing. Just don't use a spreadsheet. The next question, is there a standard JavaScript we can use to capture the UTM parameters in a form? So depending on your CMS you're using, if you're using a web-based form, it's not standardized. It's similar, but the JavaScript might have to be written in a slightly different way depending on what CMS you're using. However, you don't actually need any JavaScript at all to capture query parameters into an Eloqua landing page form. Let me show you something really super quick. Is it okay if I share my screen again, Karen?
Yeah, but just to differentiate for folks, so that's an Eloqua hosted landing page versus your website. If it's a form on your website, yes, the JavaScript does the magical piece of pulling those UTM parameters into hidden form fields, but on the landing page, not necessary, to what Steve's gonna show you guys.
Yes, exactly. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. So what you can do, if you've got a form, and let's just go and create a really quick one here, and you've got a hidden field like this, what you want to be able to do is when somebody visits your landing page that this form lives on, you want to capture any query parameters from the landing page and put them in this hidden field. Now, yes, on the CMS, you need JavaScript to do that, but on Eloqua, you don't need it. What we would do is we're actually going to go into the field merge section of Eloqua. And what we can do in there is we can create a new field merge. This is how you say like hi, first name, and email and stuff like that, right? But you can also use it to pre-populate form fields. So what we're going to do, we're going to say merge from query string, and we're going to say allow URLs, and then we're going to say what's the query string you want to capture. We say UTM campaign, for example. Okay, so let me just save this UTM example. Save that. And then what I can do back in my form, so this is what you would do in your form where you want to capture the value. You'd have your hidden field. Where's my hidden field? There we go. You'd have your hidden field. You'd go to pre-populate field data with a field merge. And the field merge you're going to use is UTM campaign example. Now what this is going to do on any Eloqua landing page where you use this form, it's going to be looking in the query parameters and grabbing any information it can find for the values you've set up. So yeah, hopefully that helps. If it's for your CMS though, you probably will need some JavaScript. So it's best to talk to your person who manages your website or your Sojourn consultant to find out the best way to do that.
Yeah. And it is pretty standard JavaScript that looks similar each time you use it on, like, you know, maybe you have 5 different pages on your website with 5 very different forms that you want to do this on. But definitely does require some JavaScript skills to do it correctly, which I don't have. So I have tried to think like, oh, I can figure it out. I'll just tweak some values in this JavaScript, and then lo and behold, it didn't work, and it was not the system, it was me, because I don't know JavaScript, and I tried to pretend like I did, but I didn't. Okay, thank you very much, Steve. So guys, if you have questions on this, please let us know. This is like one of those little hidden nooks, cool features of Eloqua that a lot of people don't know about. Sometimes, you know, you'll have a consultant cover it during your Eloqua implementation, if you were even there when your company bought Eloqua and first set it up. But nonetheless, here we are now. Now you know about this feature. There's more information on it in the Help Center. You can always dig into that. But we definitely recommend leveraging it. And to what Steve showed, like adding those custom campaign fields just makes the tracking with the UTM parameters even more detailed. So you can do better analytics ultimately. Insight, and also like with Google Analytics, for instance. So, all right, our next topic has to do with text messaging, and we hear from people a lot these days that they're exploring it, and then others, of course, are actually doing it. It's not just B2C marketers doing text messaging. So what we wanted to do today was have one of the sources of the truth at Oracle, Chris Campbell, share with us some of the latest features related to Eloqua's SMS capabilities, because they are evolving quickly. And I will say, I think this is one of the areas Eloqua is exceeding or passing the competition of other marketing automation platforms with making SMS right there inside native or out of the box with Eloqua, and they continue to make it better. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little bit of PowerPoint slides to go through, and if there's time, I can do a demo, a live demo as well. You've inspired me, Karen, so I wanted to share my dogs as well. We've got 2 Bernese Mountain Dogs, and we've got both of them during the pandemic, believe it or not. We got one, and she was so good, we decided to get a second one as well. Their names are Badge and Pilot. So Badge is is about almost 2 years old now, and she's really small for a burner. And then we got Pilot in December, and so she's just about, I guess, 6 months now. Very similar, but also incredibly different at the same time. They definitely don't like water as much as yours, Karen, based on the pictures you shared.
They probably sink. They're cute.
They're pretty hefty for sure. Very solid. All right, so let's get down to business. What I wanted to do is give a little bit of an overview of what we've delivered and why for SMS, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things we've done recently since we made this initially available in December of last year, and talk about some things that are coming in 22B and things we're planning for beyond as well. And if there's time, I can even go in and show you some of this live in the product as well. I will share some things that are future facing that we haven't delivered yet. As always, we have the best intentions of delivering on whatever we're sharing and talking about publicly. Sometimes schedules, business requirements, things like that change. Maybe the functionality might be a little bit different that we deliver or maybe delayed. So we, of course, have to show our safe harbor as a little bit of a disclaimer. All right. As far as agenda, we'll give a quick overview. We'll talk about some use cases, which might be interesting to learn about some of those. Might be a little bit different than what you might expect. And the use cases we'll talk about are based off of feedback we've gotten from customers. I can give you an idea once we get there about how many customers we've been talking to and the level of interest that we've had around this feature set that we've been adding to Eloqua. And then we'll get into features and capabilities, which really revolves around what we've introduced recently, and then of course the roadmap of what we're looking at for the immediate future and a little bit further out as well. All right. So why does SMS matter? Well, it really boils down to three main areas, three key factors. First, attention, right? Even before the pandemic, I was working from home for good solid, probably 7-8 years. And in a previous job before I joined Eloqua in 2010, I was working from home in that position as well. And over the years, what I've noticed is even though I have two monitors in front of me and I'm sitting in front of this computer all day, every day, I still have my phone sitting right next to my left hand, pretty much anywhere I go in the house, or if I leave the house, it's in my back pocket. It is the device I use to receive information. It's the device I use to send information and communicate with the world. And it's the only device I have where I can receive SMS messages and likewise send them. I am constantly paying attention to this phone, much to the chagrin of my family, quite honestly. And it's just the nature of the world today, right? So we are absolutely paying a lot of attention to this, and SMS is the mobile device is the only way you can receive these messages, right? I can't get them on a computer necessarily. At least I don't. I'm sure there's probably some applications that allow it and forwarding and so forth, but I don't think those are incredibly prevalent. The next thing is trust, right? There is some sensitivity to receiving unsolicited text messages. I think there's a stronger propensity even for people to take legal action when receiving unsolicited text messages. It's considered a very private thing. And so when people opt in to receive these messages, and they do need to, based on laws in countries, not just regulations, but laws, you need to opt in before and have consent before you can actually send a message to a phone number. And so when someone opts in, there's trust, right? If I opt in to receive a text message from a particular company or business, I am expecting to receive those messages. And when they come, I'm going to interact with them. I trust them, right? I don't get those messages if I don't opt in. And likewise, if I get a message from a location or a number that I don't know, I don't trust it. I delete it. And a lot of times I'll block the number as well. So spam rates are incredibly lower than other channels, and the trust is much higher there. And then lastly, reach, right? The response rate. If you're asking questions, if you're asking for feedback, if you're providing an opportunity for people to respond, your reach increases, right? And again, this is based on the attention factor and the trust factor combined. You are going to get much better interaction and engagement via SMS, typically, for those that have opted in and given that consent, than other channels like Facebook and email, right? All right, we'll jump right into some use cases. And these use cases are actually based off of the customers that we've been speaking with that have interest in using SMS. We've asked them to share use cases with us. We've documented them and written them down in this particular slide at a very high level. And so there's a few different industries here, and you can see the breadth of industries is quite wide. I did a webinar back in November for, I think it was about 18 professional sports teams that are Eloqua customers currently. And these are, when I say professional, these are NFL teams, NHL teams, NBA teams, the top tier of professional sports. And they all have very similar use cases. They're using SMS today. They're using it with tools outside of Eloqua. And they're doing things like more transactional type of campaigns where they have, they're advertising ticket sales and extra tickets for maybe the weekend game for season ticket holders, particular important dates in the off season as well, right? Sign up to come take a look at your season ticket location at the arena, and maybe upgrade to a better seat, for instance, right? You can send out some of those notifications via SMS, and of course, based on the attention, trust, and reach factor, get better engagement, get a better reach there. You'll notice a lot of these use cases, I think all of them, really boil down more towards a transactional use case nature. It's information that is in essence keeping that business as a thought leader, right? So as an example, agriculture company, they're selling seeds. We have one company that's actually selling seeds as part of their business to farmers, and they want those farmers to be successful with the product that they're purchasing from the business. So they're going to send out notifications about weather updates that are based, regional weather updates for their customers. They're going to send out information about, hey, it's time to plant. It's the right time to plant. It's the right time to water, maybe fertilize, things like that, right? It's not. I wouldn't call it necessarily your traditional marketing to try to drive business. It's more to help drive awareness and loyalty, right, back to that business and keep that business top of mind. That, hey, not that I bought these seeds, I bought this product, and they're now helping me get the most out of it at the same time without requiring me to go do all the research and learn all these details and become, the intimate expert that maybe they already have that information put together and making it available for everybody, right? Universities at the top, again, have many similar types of use cases. Again, all of these boil down much more towards, I would consider much more towards transactional type of messaging as opposed to your typical outbound messaging to drive business. All right. And by all means, if there's questions, feel free to ask. I don't know if you can if you're on mute, if you can, but in the Q&A for sure. All right. Last, before we get into the features and kind of the roadmap, I just wanted to, I like to talk a little bit about a high level of the broad feature set and the service offering that SMS is with Eloqua. In essence, there's 3 modes of sending. There's with SMS, there's what we call MT, and that stands for mobile terminated. This is where, as a business, you're going to create a message. You've got an audience that has consented with their phone numbers to receive those messages, and you're going to send the message out to them. And that's the end of the story. If they reply, that reply basically goes to nowhere. It doesn't actually come in and trigger any automation or any follow-up at that point. It's quite literally sent from the business to the mobile device, and it is terminated there. At the other end of the spectrum, there's what's called MO, which is mobile originated. And that's where you're, in the sports example that I was mentioning earlier, let's say you're sitting at a game, an NBA game in the arena, and it's the first quarter, and on the Jumbotron, they flash up a sign that says text, enter to enter your phone number for a drawing, a raffle in between the 3rd and 4th quarter of the game. And so they put a code up there as well, right? And so people get out their phones in the first quarter because they're sitting at the game and maybe there's a break in play, and they text the keyword enter to the code that was provided. And then later in the game, at the end of the game, the team has a drawing on the floor, and maybe they have somebody come down on the court, and they win a prize and do the introduction and then carry on with the game. That is an MO type of campaign where no message was sent out to the mobile device whatsoever. In essence, a code and a keyword were advertised with a short message somewhere, maybe a billboard, TV, in this case, in an arena on a big screen that everybody could see. That's called MO, mobile originated. The follow-up to that is those messages that are coming in are being collected and entered into this drawing, right, that was mentioned. There's a third mode called MT plus MO, and that's where a message is sent out, say from a business, it's originating, in this case, say from Eloqua. It's got some keywords in it. It's obviously sent from a code. And then when responses come in for those keywords, Eloqua can then take action, right? A follow-up message of acknowledgement can happen back. And in addition, actions can happen within Eloqua based on that. And we'll talk about those in some of the upcoming features here as well. What Eloqua has built out and the feature set that we're offering around SMS is the MT case and the MT plus MO case. We are not covering the MO case. It has come up, to be really transparent, it has come up maybe with 1 or 2 customer calls that we've had over the course of the last 6 months or so. But excuse me, primarily B2B businesses, at least in our experience so far, don't have a strong need, strong use cases around the MO type of sending. There are a couple, as I mentioned, and obviously we'll be evaluating that as we get more customers onboarded and signed up and using this. And if there's a need, we would of course build it out. But we're just not there quite yet. With Eloqua in the feature set, the SMS step, in essence, it all boils down to a campaign canvas step that allows you to send an outbound message. This, of course, is analogous to the email step that we have on the canvas and have had it there for a long, long time. And so this allows you to have, in essence, your regular campaign that you would build today, but in addition to sending emails and having all the other logic, you can now send an SMS message directly from that canvas as well. There's a lot of other things that go along with that step, right? That power that step and back that step to make it actually function. Things like an editor, things like opt-in preference management at a phone number level as well as a contact level. The editor with the personalization that I just mentioned, being able to import data, have phone number validation, all of these things, right, are boiled down to having a complete feature set, and that's exactly what we built out. We do have reporting as well. So once you send these messages, you would like to obviously get some reporting. Is the next question of how do I report and get details on how well my messages are actually doing for the business, what's the engagement, and so forth. So we've got reporting in the form of insight reports as well as operational reports directly on the canvas. And then lastly, this is a full service offering. So when you sign up to, it is a paid add-on for Eloqua. It is based off of usage. So how many messages are you actually going to send? Pricing and the volume actually varies country to country because it's a different cost to send a message, say in the United States versus Canada versus London, or versus England, I should say, versus India versus Germany, et cetera, right? Every region has its own pricing guidelines and pricing costs and so forth. At the end of the day, though, what you're doing when you purchase this add-on is you're signing a contract with Oracle to have this add-on and this service within the product available. And Oracle takes care of all of the management and the contracting with the aggregators to actually send the messages and procure the codes, get all of that configured and so forth. So this is actually, we did this full service offering because that's one of the things that our customers were asking for. They didn't want to go to partners and have to sign up and manage these relationships. So it's another plus we see, and we've gotten pretty good feedback on this approach as well thus far. All right, so let's try to zoom through a few of these recent highlights. This first section, all of this was released in our 22A release, which was in February. And as I mentioned, I think earlier, the initial rollout of SMS, very first availability was in the November, very early December timeframe, the 21D release of last year. So this is a feature set that's, while it was worked on for, I'd say a good solid 18 months or so prior to that, a lot of effort put into it. It is very new as far as public usage and public availability. So the first thing we did is, when we first released this, there was some restrictions around the phone number format, and we're loosening those up a little bit. For instance, one case is you had to actually have the plus sign in front of the country code on the phone number. We can infer that, so we removed that restriction and constraint, and there's no longer need to have the plus sign. Phone numbers can be formatted in such that we check the in essence, what we do, we check that there's the first couple digits to see the country code. And then from there, we check to see, is this a valid phone number as far as syntax? So it can have parentheses, it can have dashes, it can have periods, normal punctuation for phone numbers, but it can't have things like letters, right? It can't have an exclamation point. It can't have an equal sign and things like that, right? So we check the punctuation. We check, for instance, if it's a +1 country code for North America, you can't have the first digit of the area code as an invalid, like a 0, right? There's no phone number in the United States that starts with area code starts with 0. So we do checks like that to ensure that the phone number is actually valid. This was introduced as a new layer of validation within the 22A release as well, with more coming in 22B. We also introduced a couple new activities. So SMS delivery receipts are now available within the activity log section, as you can see here in the screenshot. And then, of course, we've had SMS send there from the beginning. We're looking at adding more activities in the future. As far as the editor goes, initially, the editor allowed only editing and creation of the outbound message, the box you see on the left here. And with the 22A release, we introduced the ability, when you have keywords added to a message, to see in essence, the conversation path. So the way this editor is built out and the way SMS works in general is you build an outbound message, you send that message out. It might have some keywords in it. If it does, if responses come in, Eloqua may want to, and the marketer may want to send an automated response back out to that individual as well. And so we built the editor out to have this kind of prescribed flow where the outbound message is here. Any keywords show up in the middle. So the green start is one of the keywords that's within the outbound message. And then if someone actually replies with start, Eloqua wants to send, the marketer, the business wants to send an automated reply acknowledging that, so the individual knows, hey, we received your message, and we're doing what we said we would do with it, right? So we've got this visual flow within the editor to try to make this a much easier, much better experience for creating these messages and creating this flow as well. Having the editor in this way, I will say, also allows us to not have all of this pushed out into the campaign canvas. So you don't have to rebuild this flow and this decision logic within the campaign canvas as well. Makes it a little bit easier that way. We have, as far as setup goes, keyword management. So initially, this is for opt-in and opt-out keywords, and we will be introducing custom keyword management as well very soon. So a little bit later this year. This, in essence, is the keywords are special, right? They're in essence, they're just words, but they need to be typed right. There's actions that Eloqua takes. So based on those keywords coming in a reply. So we offer the ability here to manage those keywords to be sure that they're centralized, and somebody doesn't just make one up on the fly, for instance, and pop it into a campaign, and then maybe it wouldn't necessarily be handled properly by Eloqua in that regard. So we've added this special area for this special type of entity that's within the messages. Directly within Eloqua, of course, that doesn't mean all of these enhancements have to be directly within Eloqua. We have enhanced our Salesforce app as well to allow importing of the opt-in status of a phone number from Salesforce. We will be looking at doing this with Sales Cloud as well in our Sales Cloud integration very soon. So again, this is allowing sourcing of potential consent that's been given to outside systems outside of Eloqua to allow customers to get up to speed and manage their ability to communicate with individuals a little bit quicker here. We also introduced a dashboard, an SMS analysis dashboard. So this is analogous to the email analysis dashboard that's been in Eloqua for a little while. And again, just show some stats based on the codes that have been in play and in use, and the number of sends, the delivers, the failures to deliver, activity, engagement and so forth as well over a timeline. So again, won't spend too much time on this, but it's again, analogous to what you would see with an email analysis dashboard as well. All right, and then a couple more slides in this section, and we'll get on to the upcoming innovations as well. A little bit more exciting stuff. So I mentioned insight reporting at the top. We did introduce with our 22A release a complete SMS subject matter area within Insight, so you can build custom reports, and we have a couple. We also have a couple out of the box reports for SMS as well. In the future, we'll be looking at having a combined campaign subject area that would allow you to include SMS as well as email metrics within a single report. This has been another request that we've gotten from customers as well as, as far as partner solutions, which have been great, by the way, and still are. to report on SMS effectivity within a campaign, they've got to go to a partner tool to get that information. And to get the email effectiveness in the same exact campaign, they've got to go to Eloqua. And they would love to have something combined, is what we've heard. So we'll be looking at different ways to do this within Eloqua in the future as well. All right. So let's get to the exciting stuff. I'll try to speed up here, Karen. I'm not sure if there's anything coming after I'm done, but if I need to speed up, by all means, let me know. There's a couple more features here. So some things that are coming in 22B, a form processing step, right? So this was a gap that we were aware of and we're conscious of course, leading up to the release in December and as well as within February. But there's other ways to handle some of this. A very nice kind of slick way to do this is with a form processing step. So marketer can put a phone number field and maybe a checkbox to opt in or opt out of receiving messages via phone and on their form. And then Eloqua can take action on that in an automated way. So this obviously makes it a lot easier for people to raise their hand and say, yes, it's okay to contact me, and here's how you can contact me. So not only is this a form processing step, but it also branches out into phone number validation, right? So that there will be on the forms, just as we have a syntax check for email address to be sure it's a valid email address format, we have a similar check for phone numbers. So you'll be able to have a phone number field, hit a checkbox to turn this on, and then as you're typing in your phone number, if it's in an invalid format, the form on the page would actually highlight that and say, hey, you can't submit the form because it's an invalid link or invalid characters, et cetera. And so we're really happy, really excited to get this out there. Again, something that we've seen as a very important item. Of course, we've gotten some questions about this from customers as well, which helped motivate us to get it done sooner rather than later as well. The phone number validation doesn't just apply to forms, it also matters within Eloqua. So Eloqua, as you're uploading contacts, as you're entering them in the UI, if you're editing a phone number or creating a contact manually, for instance, we will have the validation layer there as well. We're introducing invalid keyword messages and managing being able to manage those as well. So if you send an outbound message with some keywords and someone replies back, and let's say a match of the keyword, any of the keywords that were in the outbound message isn't there, then we can send what this will allow for is a message to be sent to say, we got your reply, but we didn't recognize any of the keywords in it. Do you want to, please check your message and try again, if you need us to take this action or register anything in any way. All right, and I think did I skip a slide? Nope, I didn't, sorry. All right, and last couple slides here. Another one that we're really happy to get out, something that's been requested quite often is this reply to SMS step. We've had a couple requests for this as well. And what this allows for really is to have a decision step on the canvas that checks to see if a particular selected message has, the contact has replied to that message. Not only have they checked if they've replied, but also check which keyword they used when they replied. So you can get very, very specific. Did someone reply with the word enter, for instance, in this case that we had earlier, in this example case with the sports team, or win, or something of that nature. And then you can take action based on that and route contacts through the canvas based on that reply or lack of reply after a given amount of time. We'll also have a sent SMS step, so a decision step. So evaluate whether an SMS message has been sent or not. Excuse me. And again, these decision steps will operate in the same manner that all the decision steps in Eloqua operate. They'll evaluation period time and replied within or registered within the last X number of hours, days, weeks, etc. All right. And then lastly, at a little bit higher level, we will be supporting and building in functionality for custom keywords. Within India, there's something called DLT. This stands for Distributed Ledger Template. And in essence, it is a requirement for sending bulk messages within India, bulk SMS messages. It's a spam prevention feature that India has introduced for their country. And in essence, what you need to do is upload a template. You need to provide a template of the message that you're going to be sending, register that template with the aggregators. And then when you actually launch the campaign, the aggregator will take a look at the template, compare the messages that are going out with that template. And if they match, you're good. If they don't match, then the aggregator actually will block the messages from going. So again, a good spam prevention feature that's been introduced within India, and we've got some features within Eloqua to help automate that, make it easier for the customer to actually adhere and get their messages out. As other countries introduce things like this and different regulations, of course, we would be taking a look at adopting those feature sets wherever possible as well. And then lastly, asset management for SMS, right? There's asset management across segments and emails and so forth. And as SMS messages get created and so forth, there's going to be a need for asset management for SMS as well. And so we're definitely taking a look at that. A little bit further out, we're looking at things like segmentation filters, changing up the editor a little bit, so enhancing it even more, so we can have a little bit more of a conversational type tone around the outbound and the responsive messages that are coming back and so forth as well. A little bit better error handling, a little bit more enhancements to phone number validation, you name it. We are definitely still focused on enhancing this feature set, and a lot more work to do throughout this year and of course into next. And I think I've left 1 minute here, Karen, so hopefully I didn't go too long.
No, it's all good. One quick question that came through with respect to SMS and security. The question is, can we allow certain users access to send SMS from a certain short or 10 DLC?
So this is a great question. It's actually come up in a couple cases, and we currently don't have the ability to tie down codes, so secure individual codes for particular users. It is wide open at this point, and so we are looking at that. We're aware that there's a valid request there. It's something we'll be looking at a little bit later this year, and I would say probably most likely into next year, that we would want to be able to introduce this feature to secure the codes and just in general put a little bit more security, and it's kind of the permissions that you would expect around assets and so forth in Eloqua, similar to what we have in other areas. Absolutely.
Okay. Makes sense.
Hopefully that helps, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Good question. We're at time, guys. Thank you so much, Chris and Steve, for preparing and presenting today. These are both hot topics. I'll follow up with everybody with the recording and the recap, but thank you all for attending. People are trickling out. So hope everybody has a nice rest of your day and weekend ahead. Thanks again, everybody. See you next month, hopefully.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me, Karen. Have a good one.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Bye, everybody.